Department with the arrest of Bailey Rosenberger. Murder happened back on January 1st, 2016. I was working that night as a field commander. Then Detective Rivera was the primary homicide investigator. Now he's our sergeant in homicide. And we responded to the 1100 block of West Shields at the Shields Express Market. What had happened there that day was Gerchon Gill was working, as he normally did, alone in the store. He was working to pay for his daughter's wedding, his son's medical school, and he was well known and well liked by many people in the neighborhood. Just before 4 p.m. that day, suspect identified later as Bailey Rosenberger entered the store. He was just 15 years old at the time. He engaged Gerchon at one of the display cases looking at some of the merchandise, and without any provocation began stabbing him brutally. And when Gerchon tried to defend himself, he went to the ground and he was brutally kicked as well. He tried to defend himself but was overpowered and stabbed 11 times, and he died on scene. Again, Detective Rivera responded out there that night to investigate, and as you can probably tell, that case is stuck with both Sergeant Rivera and myself for all these years, just on the brutality of what happened out there that night and knowing that poor Gerchon was just trying to do his job. One of the many investigative steps taken that night by then Detective, now Sergeant Rivera, was to involve the California Department of Justice and their crime scene team. That's who's with me here today. They responded and helped us to process the scene, leaving no evidentiary stone unturned. And in fact, evidence was recovered that night to include physical evidence, video, and statements of multiple witnesses. Despite all that and numerous tips by the community, we were unable to break through with any suspect identification for nearly 9 years. Finally, thanks to our close collaboration with Department of Justice, we recently received notification that there was a match on some of the fingerprint evidence left at the scene, which identified then 15-year-old Bailey Rosenberger as the suspect in this murder. Detectives attempted to locate him, and what we found that he was somewhere in the Modesto area, so we engaged our partners at Modesto PD, and they went out and their patrol officers ultimately contacted him and took him into custody. He was transported to the Fresno County Jail, where he will be facing prosecution here in Fresno County for Gerchon's murder with numerous enhancements because it did involve a robbery as well as the murder. I want to thank you to all of our partners, the California DOJ, Modesto PD, and the District Attorney's Office that will be prosecuting this. We couldn't do it without you, and I happen to know that Gerchon's family has long awaited the day that someone would be held accountable for Gerchon's brutal murder. So although it's still a very sad situation that sticks with us, we're absolutely very pleased to say that Bailey Rosenberger is in custody for that murder and won't be hurting anybody else. So with that, I will turn it over to Lieutenant Paul Cervantes of our homicide unit. He can give a few more details, and then we'll take questions that you may have. Paul.
Thank you, Chief. As the Chief mentioned, this is a good day for the Fresno Police Department and our partners from the Department of Justice to come to the podium and report the success that we have in actually making an arrest in this case. I can tell you that these particular cases, as all homicide cases, are ones that we pay attention to. The detectives that work this case, now one of whom is actually a sergeant, this is a testament to the fact that we are persistent, we are relentless, and we are in fact resourceful. It's a collaborative effort, and these type of cases can only come to fruition by the fact that we utilize all the resources available to us. I would be very remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Assistant Chief Ivan Valencia from the Modesto Police Department was instrumental in the apprehension efforts. Through his officers out in the field, we're able to take Mr. Rosenberger into custody, and again, without having to use any force or to have anybody else hurt. So there are many details in this case that we shared with you, some of which we cannot share because the case will be prosecuted at the District Attorney's Office. I would like to also thank the District Attorney's Office for considering this matter and then taking it in terms of prosecution. So at this point, we'll open it up to any questions that you folks may have that perhaps I can answer from the investigative component or the Chief can answer as well. Yeah, thank you for that question, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. When we have cases like this, sometimes we recognize that we're going to be very dependent on the actual crime scene processing itself. We have a very, very dedicated team here at the Fresno Police Department that does an excellent job at doing that. But sometimes there are specific cases, very unique to the circumstances, in which case we summon the assistance of the Department of Justice, in which they have sometimes specialized tools and techniques that would assist us in this endeavor. The latent evidence that was recovered on scene ultimately came to a comparison and or a match that was made once Mr. Rosenberger was taken into custody and more fingerprints were obtained.
Has Mr. Rosenberger, I mean, this happened when he was 15 years old. Has he had any other contact with law enforcement?
Yes, he did. Yes, sir. He did. As a matter of fact, Mr. Rosenberger was, in fact, arrested in the Modesto area for narcotics-related charges. That's when we were able to obtain, I mean, we as a law enforcement agency were able to obtain more fingerprints and latent evidence, and then that's when the comparison happened.
And so in situations like this, how important is community involvement when there are so many questions?
You know, I think this particular matter really does tug at the heartstrings of our community. You know, Gerchon was a member of this community who was doing nothing wrong. He was serving his community in the capacity of a clerk at a store. And when we have cases like this that happen, that are vicious, and quite honestly, they're gonna strike a nerve with our community. So, as with all homicide investigations, we take them very serious, and it's up to the investigative body that we have here present today to bring it across the finish line. So, I'm going to turn it back over to the chief for further.
So have you been in contact with Gershon's family, and are they anticipating going to the court?
Yes, our detectives met with them yesterday, and they're very much actively involved in this case. It's still a wound that has not healed for them, understandably, and so they're looking forward to prosecution vigorously on this case.
And is there any complications? I mean, this happened when he was 15 years old, now in his 20s. I mean, if he's tried as a juvenile, he'd be out of court at 22 anyways.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, so the district attorney will have to work through all those details, and we'll have to see how it turns out. But there are several different options for the prosecution pathway to take.
What if the last 9 years have been like for his family?
Just, again, a wound that hasn't healed. They miss him, I'm sure, every day. I know that although they're very pleased to hear of the arrest, it's still very sad for them, and it probably just brings it right back to the front of their consciousness. Every day they miss him, but you know it's right there in front of them now that we'll be moving forward with a prosecution. And you asked a little bit earlier about, you know, although we had multiple witnesses that were interviewed and provided us good information, it wasn't quite enough to determine Mr. Rosenberger's identity, but it will still be very valuable in the prosecution. So the cooperation and information from witnesses and the community alike is still very important.
Was he previously a person of interest, or was he sort of out of the blue?
No, we didn't know who he was until these notifications started coming in regarding the latent print evidence.
I'm sure he hasn't expressed any remorse or anything like that, has he?
Yeah, I can't comment to that. I don't know what his statements were. I don't know, Paul, if that's anything you want to comment on at this time. Probably not, due to the nature of prosecution. We don't want to interfere with that. But we thank you for coming. This, again, is a very important case. All cases are important to us. They never go away. And this is just a good example of that. You know, the personal involvement of a couple of us here on that night when we responded and actually got to see up front and close the tragedy that happened. Sometimes justice takes a little longer than we like, but I've stood up at this podium and said it before. We don't give up. And if you're committing crimes in Fresno, we might not catch you immediately, but we most likely will. And so keep looking over your shoulder, because we don't give up.
How long had he been in Modesto, or was he in Fresno for a while after this happened, or did he?
You know, we're not clear on that. He did live in Fresno at the time. We know that. He's moved around to different places, and most recently was Modesto.
Gang member?
No, not that his history shows or there's any indication of. All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll do the Spanish here in a minute.
You want us up here for that?
That'd
be nice, though.
Sure, we could, yeah.
Does anybody want the Spanish interview? Okay, then we'll stay up here.